Hello everyone, good day. I am back. I'm Manoj. I'm leading the developer relations and office of open source at Lambda Test, and I'll be the host for today's closing keynote for day one, TestMu 2023. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker today, Anne-Marie Charrett, who's going to talk us about leadership is everyone's responsibility. I know it's pretty early there in Australia. How are you, Anne?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. I am so excited to be here. I know it's been a massive day. I hear it's been a massive day at the conference, and I'm just excited I can be there to kind of close things off for the first day.
Absolutely. We are equally excited, ending the day one on a great note, talking about leadership is everyone's responsibility. Thank you all for joining, and especially talking about this keynote. Leadership is everyone's responsibility in a fast-changing and complex tech world. Without right leadership, we might end up rushing features, forgetting about quality. But we're not talking about just leadership, but we're talking about leaders who are comfortable in handling the ambiguity with the change and can steer their team towards excellence. In this talk, Anne-Marie will look ahead to the future where everyone, no matter their role, steps up as a leader. Anne-Marie has more than 20 years of experience in software engineering. She's not only a great speaker, an author, and a trainer. She also recently won the prestigious Eurostar Testing Excellence Award in 2022. And most exciting for me and everyone at Lambda Test is her team is also one of the finalists for Best Test Team of the Year in Lambda Test Delta Awards. And we are very much looking forward to the finale in day 3. And there you go. She's all about making quality and leadership work together. And we can't wait to hear all those insights from Anne-Marie. Show your love for the topic by using emojis where you can find down below. And without any ado, please join me in welcoming Anne-Marie to the stage. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj. So excited to be here. And my goodness, how well organized is this conference? I mean, please, everyone, give the conference a bit of love. I'm amazed how organized from a speaker's perspective. What an amazing job they're doing. So I don't know what your experience is, but very impressed by the organization skills. Thank you, Test Lambda, for inviting me. So let's get this going. Fantastic. I'm delighted to be keynoting at TestMu. It's just a great opportunity for me. And I'm happy that I'm just closing today. I hear it's been an amazing day with, I think, over 1,600 people attending. So that's fantastic news for everyone. So I'm here today talking about leadership is everyone's responsibility, because we've heard so many times quality is everyone's responsibility, and I just want to extend that, because I think often quality gets put into a box, and we look at quality and it's like, oh, that's the responsibility of that person over there, but really everyone needs to be taking responsibility for quality, and that includes leaders. So I think leadership is a thing that's passionate to my heart, and I've been working in tech for a long time, at least 20 plus years, enough to turn my hair gray overnight, as I've worked in waterfall, agile, fintech companies, SaaS, hypergrowth, scale-ups, you name it. I've had an opportunity to experience that. It's been a wonderful, wonderful career for me, and I have absolutely no regrets about any of it. But this length of experience has given me an opportunity to identify patterns over the years about quality. And I want to talk about a couple of those that I've observed. And the first one is that quality, looks easy, but it's really, really hard, right? You all know this, right? You work in the quality space, and everyone's like, no, it's just going to take a couple of weeks to do the testing. And it's like 3 months later, and everyone's still tearing their hairs out trying to get the testing done on time. So it's really can be really complicated. It's such an enormous space, right? I mean, people think, oh yeah, I'm just going to chuck out a couple of playwright scripts and I'll be done. And then someone goes, yeah, but what about accessibility? What about security? What about performance? Oh, and by the way, could you manage the CI/CD pipeline at the same time? And what about those SLOs that we're worried about? Can you also look at the alerts? And a little bit of observability and testability, if you could throw that in too. Oh, and don't forget the process. We need to have a quality process. And so suddenly the concept of just doing a few scripts becomes enormous, right? So people tend to underestimate how much testing needs to be done. But they also underestimate sometimes, I think, especially if they haven't had a lot of experience in the space, they underestimate that proving that something works isn't enough. Sometimes you have to prove more than, yes, it does what it's supposed to do. You've got to look at questions behind that and understand, all the different situations where it might not work. We can't just prove in one case. We have to look at lots of different situations. And things like exploratory testing become so important in that space. And it's something that isn't always utilized well. So quality is enormous and it looks easy, but it's really hard. But there's other things, right, that make it hard. And often as quality people, we're the person who is the salmon swimming up the stream, is how I like to describe it. Everyone's driving to get that product out the door. And you're that person's going, I'm not sure it's ready yet. I don't know if this product is ready to go. And often we have to speak truth to power, don't we? We have to say things that are not necessarily totally comfortable for the team to hear, but we say them because it's important for people to be able to make informed decisions about the state of quality. And often we're a horizontal in the matrix. If you think about a matrix in an organization, often we're the horizontal, where we don't necessarily always part of a team. Often we need to influence horizontally, and that can be really, really difficult. We don't necessarily have all the control to be able to control the project or be able to tell people to slow down. We have to work within the parameters of what we've given. And so we have to work very hard on our influence skills. And this is a critical aspect, I believe, of working in the quality space. I am constantly asked about demonstrating the value of what I do. I'm not sure I know any other part of the organization that gets asked so much to do this. If I ask for new things or if I ask for new extra people, often it's like, yes, but show us the stats or show us the data to be able to prove. Now, I'm not against having to obviously put a business case forward for a change or for new things, but I have observed that it's often that I have to, or anyone in the quality space has to jump a couple of extra hoops to get what they need. Just saying. But quality is hard for everyone. Like, it's not easy. And I think this is something that we should really acknowledge. But there's another thing that I want to talk about too. And that is that even though it's really hard, everyone is passionate about quality, right? From the junior engineer to the CTO. I have never been to a job interview for a company that someone says, yeah, no, we don't really care about quality here. We're just putting you in there as a kind of, like to pretend that we care about quality, to show people that we care. No, everyone says they're passionate about quality. But I don't see a lot of people wanting to necessarily pay for it. In fact, sometimes I've been in a situation where they are hiring you because they want you to solve that quality problem for them. Quality is sometimes scary, and they don't really know how to handle them, and they want you to come and solve that problem for you. So everyone is passionate about quality, but often when it comes to getting the budget and the people that you need, it can be really, really hard to obtain that. And the final thing is that quality has changed and evolved over time, hasn't it? I mean, I think that's something that I've observed is that the ferocious change of things that are happening in the quality space. You know, we've gone from so many different frameworks, so many different tools, so many different methodologies and ways of working. But quality is still a huge challenge for everyone. And that's what makes it a fascinating space. And that's something that I've come to observe, that change is constant. There, even though that we're constantly changing new things, we're still facing the same problems. So let's explore some of the changes that we're experiencing right now. I like to call change the new black. You know, the only thing that we can be certain about is that change is coming and it's going to be relentless. And so we need to start getting comfortable with handling change all the time. But I believe that we've had a huge amount of increase in the complexity and uncertainty that's happening around us. And I'm not just talking about technical things, though I do feel that we have to talk a little bit about the technical challenges that are coming towards us. You know, the changes over time, even in the last 5 years or so, the expansion of cloud computing and how we deliver software and microservices in that space and the emphasis on SREs and SLOs has means that we have to really consider how we deal with that technology and how we incorporate that and we think about testing with all that change. How we deliver software is constantly evolving. But there's also the technology sides, right? And I'm sure you've heard about talks about machine learning and LLMs, the SLOs and SREs, evolving security concerns. I mean, the amount of emphasis we need to place on security has really changed our way of how we look at software, how we test software, and how we think about quality of software. The concepts of testability and recoverability, our ability to fix software in the cloud quickly before our customers are even aware that software bug exists. These concepts are challenging us to think differently about quality. And I think also it's become hugely overwhelming. I look at things like team topologies, for example, which is a new concept that's coming out about platform teams. You might have heard about platform teams and organizing the structure of an organization being handled in order to have platform teams and how we can improve the communication within organizations using concepts such as team topologies. I really believe that part of the team topologies ideology and thinking has come out of the fact that so many teams are overwhelmed. So many teams are finding it difficult to understand what is the work. Whereas 10 or 15 years ago, it was very clear an engineer was there to write software, write product code. Now they need to be able to be aware of the CI/CD. They need to be aware of security. They need to be aware of accessibility. They need to be aware of the context and product, and they need to have kind of semi-BA skills as well. And I've heard engineers talk to me anecdotally saying, I'm lucky if I get 2 hours of writing code done a day because I've got all these other things that I need to do. And that's including attending meetings as well and different types of things. And so the teams are hurting. The teams are finding it really challenging to focus on what they need to do, which is to write great and deliver great products. And I think team topologies and the way it's structured is an attempt to reduce that cognitive overload that so many teams are facing. And so it's a real thing. The complexity and the uncertainty that we're experiencing is real. The other thing that we're looking at, but that's just in technology, the other thing we should acknowledge and should be aware of is, of course, that in our society, we're having huge changes too. And we don't develop software in a bubble. We're part of humanity. We're part of our society. And we're seeing increasing polarization of ideology. Clearly, having the war in Europe, in the Ukraine, and the pandemic. These are huge upheavals that we have faced in our society. And let's not forget about the weather. Our weather patterns are changing. It's becoming more unpredictable. We're having heat waves, sea temperature rises, storms, tornadoes. Oh my God, this is so depressing. Let's move on. But you get the picture. You get the picture that we are having huge amounts of change, not just in technology, but in our whole society. You know, I recently posted on Twitter about burnout, you know, and I was like, why don't conferences talk about burnout and have a theme about burnout? And I was amazed, so amazed at how many people echoed the sentiment on social media. Yes, they were experiencing burnout too. They were exhausted. I suggested that we hold a conference on that theme, but we're all too burnt out to arrange it. So that never happened. But I truly believe as an industry, and perhaps even as a society, that we're all slightly burnt out. At least I know I have been. Is it just me that has the desire to return to more simple times, to run to the hills, dreaming of retiring in the country, maybe that rustic cabin, putting a tin foil on my hat, on my head, and just not wanting to deal with society, throwing out all technology? I don't know, maybe it's just me. But I think it's strange that in 2014, we were talking about at conferences and dreaming about disrupting everything. Uber, we were going to disrupt the taxi industry. We're going to disrupt the hotel industry. We're going to be innovative and disrupt. But today, it's different. Today, we have disruption fatigue. No, stop changing things. Stop it. Slow down. It's overwhelming. It's too much. As leaders, we're asked to do more with less. Increase our productivity, increase product margins, hypergrowth. Oh my goodness, who invented that word? 50% profit margin on a company is hugely challenging for people within the organization. And the response to all this uncertainty and complexity, and I don't know if this is true, but anecdotally, I'm feeling that there is a sense of a return to command and control. Have you experienced that? Is that what you're seeing in your organization? I'd love to hear. But certainly from my perspective, we're seeing a response to all this change and difficulty by having this command and control type of approach, telling people what to do, becoming more directive from the top, taking back some of the autonomy that the teams have experienced. It's understandable, really, in a way, because people find these times challenging. Now, as leaders, we can't simply hide away, can we? We can't run to the hills as much as we might want to and wish everything would disappear. We need to be there for our teams. So how do we as leaders lead in times of complexity and change and burnout? Well, I guess my experience is that the first thing that we need to look at is we need to have our people being able to own and manage uncertainty. It's not good enough that our leaders are able to do that. Everybody needs to be ready. Everybody needs to be prepared to deal with uncertainty and change. We want people in teams to be agile and flexible to responding to whatever comes their way. Now, this is difficult, especially in quality, because many of our stakeholders see testing as providing predictability and repeatability. They don't want to hear all this uncertainty stuff. They don't want to hear all this complexity stuff. They just want to know that their software is good and ready to go. You know I'm right. Okay. So how do we balance this? How do we balance both? It's really difficult. We have to offer predictability and repeatability to our stakeholders, but also juggle that uncertainty and complexity. Well, they never said quality was easy, did they? Look, there's one way I've worked out to do this, and this is by focusing on the people to give them agency and autonomy to make decisions. It's the only way I've found that has really worked to help people respond to whatever change comes that way. Software is going to be late. We can handle it. Changes in requirements, it's okay. We can handle it. Something gets cancelled. We're totally disappointed, but we can handle it. We need people to be confident in their decision making. We want people to be able to back themselves and to look out for that change. So how do we go about doing that? How do we help people become the hero of Harlem? You know that boy who stuck his finger in the dam? We want people to see problems and recognize them and go and do something to fix them, to be proactive and responsive to change. I think that's one of my biggest problems with command and control, is that it encourages a certain amount of passiveness, waiting to be told what to do. It creates a culture of that waiting to be told what to do. I'm not the only person who thinks like this. David Marquet, author of Turn the Ship Around, was a commander of a nuclear submarine. He realized that he needed his whole crew to be leaders. Because I don't know about you, but if there's a nuclear submarine going around the world, I want everybody on that ship to be aware and on the ball. I don't want them just looking at, oh, there's a fire, but that's not my job. I don't want to do anything about that, or I'm too busy. No, we want those people to go raise the alarm and say, hey, there's a problem over here. We need to do something about it. And this is how I think it should be fixed. David Marquet created this concept that everyone is a leader, from the lowest ranked sailor to the top commander. He encouraged everyone to say, I intend, rather than wait for permission. So they see a problem, they say, I intend to do this. This gives their commanders an opportunity to step in and say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. But yet it also gives them the space and the opportunity to step in and make those decisions. David Marquet was a permission giver. We need to be permission givers in our organizations. We need to encourage people to step out of their box and proactively work to fix things. On our part, we need to create those opportunities where people can have just enough stretch to challenge them without overwhelming them. Recently in an organization, I worked to develop this concept called co-creation. Have you noticed in organizations, this is in job ads and things like this, if you look at job ads for senior leadership or sort of leadership type roles, they also always require strategic thinking. Have you seen that? It's like strategic thinking is the skill that you automatically have to have when you become a leader. Now, don't get me wrong. Strategic thinking is super important. And I agree, all leaders should and need strategic thinking to have vision and to have a strategy to move a company forward. But I have two concerns. One is, how do those leaders get that experience if no one is helping them do strategic thinking when they're earlier in their career? And where is those opportunities to develop strategic thinking? So recently at an organization, I developed this concept of co-creation. I, as a director of quality engineering, had been given the opportunity to do a lot of strategic thinking, for the whole organization. So if you think about beyond engineering, into product, into support, it was my job to think about how to develop that strategy for the whole organization. But with my concept of co-creation, I didn't take that responsibility just by myself. I took the responsibility, but I also brought someone along the way. I refused to do any strategic work unless I could have somebody on my team working with me to do that strategic thinking. And often I would provide a framework, but I would get that other person to actually do that thinking and fill in their work. And by providing constant feedback, that person was able to start developing their skills in strategic thinking, because no one's going to learn how to do strategic thinking unless they start doing strategic thinking. I know, mind blown, right? So I think this concept of co-creation and pairing on strategy is really powerful. It means that there's opportunity and support when it's offered, when it's needed. We must give people opportunity to develop skill and to build confidence in their ability. It's not just the opportunity, when you do co-creation or when you help people with strategic thinking and giving them opportunities, it's not just about developing a skill, but it's the confidence that a person gets by realizing they can do this. I can do this. I can do strategic thinking. I have that ability. And that's the confidence that you want to instill in your team. The confidence that they can go and handle any situation. The only way they're going to get that confidence is by tackling those situations. Your job as a leader is to help them learn that in a safe way. But it's not just that, is it? It's not just about having leadership skills, or it's not just about creating that person. We need to find ways to help our whole organization. And this is why I'm absolutely passionate about creating spaces where people thrive. I'm a firm believer that as leaders, our job is to create ecosystems where people can thrive. Not just create spaces, but create sustainable spaces where people can do fantastic work. Everybody wants that opportunity to thrive and feel engaged in their work. We all want to feel valued. So what does that look like in practical terms? Well, I'll tell you one thing. It doesn't mean kumbaya and holding hands. It doesn't mean necessarily ping pong tables or free lunches. Though I have to say, I'll take those things if somebody gives them to me. It doesn't mean that you will let people sink or swim. I want to tell you a story of a time when I didn't do this really well. I'd taken on a new role as a quality engineering manager for a scale up. Now we're looking at about 50 engineers all up. I was very excited to take this role because I've been working on a coaching model for testers in order to help them become excellent in their craft, to be great critical thinkers, to think about strategy. And I'd worked on this by coaching a lot of people remotely, but I had never had the opportunity to try this in a company context. So I was very excited to take this role in an XP house. It was an amazing opportunity. And with XP, there was a lot of pair programming. Everyone was passionate about testing, and they had fortnightly releases. But right before the end of the release, there was this little test team sitting there in the dark, in the corner, asked to test everything as fast as possible in 2 days. And since the company was scaling, it was clear that this was not going to work in the future. This test team was going to become a bottleneck, and something had to be done. So I came along, and with minimal discussion with many people, I think I talked to a few senior leaders, I placed all the testers into the developer teams. And this was really unusual at the time. That these teams were all developers. There wasn't such a concept of a cross-functional team. So this tester was the first person to make that team a little bit more blended. But never fear, I instructed them that they were there to drive quality in their teams. And if they needed help, I was there. And that was pretty much it. It was very much throw the tester into the deep end and let's see if they sink or swim. Now, unsurprisingly, there were mixed results. Some testers found it amazing. They were like, oh, finally the opportunity to try all these new things. But most of the testers found it incredibly difficult. And it wasn't just the testers. The teams themselves were finding it hard. After all, they were pair programming every day. Now what do I do with this tester in the team? What happens when we go for coffees? I know, right? I thought that one was a bit extreme. But anyway, how about you take the tester with you? But, you know, there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, and very uncertain of what to do. I had tech leads and engineering managers not really understanding what the testers were meant to be doing. And I realized at that point that I needed that having the best craftspeople in the world and focusing on coaching only the testers was a fundamental mistake. And I'd also provided too much ambiguity. Sure, they were a stretch, but it was too much of a stretch. A little struggle is useful, but too much overwhelms. How could I find the happy middle? I love this quote from Alexander de Haar because to me, this is what we should be focusing on. I realized my role was, yes, to ensure that the testers were ready for the teams by being really great testers, but also to ensure that the teams were ready for the testers. And that meant I had to work with tech leads, I had to work with the engineering managers, and I had to educate them, and I had to educate the whole team. So I did a whole team training on exploratory testing. I had lean coffee sessions with senior leaders so that they could ask questions about strategy and how to do things. And I gradually started introducing more of a framework to help the whole team and the whole of engineering manage the whole of quality. So quality is not just about the tester, but it's also working on the whole ecosystem, the whole system, to see if you can manage structured change in that way. And as I said, change is going to happen. Let me tell you a second story here. I know that change is constantly happening, but have you noticed that many people find change difficult? You know, sometimes I really struggle to understand this. Why do people find change so difficult? I love change. It's a new opportunity for growth, new things to learn, constantly changing environment. Change is great, right? After 20 plus years of working in the industry, I finally figured out why change can be so difficult. I got to experience a change I did not like. A change that many people are experiencing in the tech industry. A while ago, myself and half my team were laid off. This was a change I did not like. And it was hard because I had no involvement in that process. I was angry, frustrated. I didn't agree with the decisions they made. And it was really hard for me to accept that change. And I've had some times to reflect about that change and why my response to this particular change was so different to the responses that I have to change in general, which tend to be positive. And I've realized that in one, I was driving the change. In many situations of my work as a leader in quality, I've been the one that's been instigating the change and driving that change. In this one, this change was imposed on me. I know it seems obvious, but I think this is something as leaders we fail to often appreciate is the impact of change that we're having on the rest of the organization. And I think when we're making changes is that we really need to think through the impact and the consequences of that change on others around us. There was another reason though. I had no agency in the matter. I wasn't consulted and I wasn't involved in the process. I think this is really, really important when driving change in any organization. It's the importance of giving people agency when change is happening. And what I mean by that is involving people in the process. And in my experience, if you involve people in the change process, even if the outcome is not something that they like or would or had or wanted, they are far more willing to accept that outcome if they have been involved in the process and the process has been transparent to them. So maintain transparency, no matter how hard the change is. Give people agency by involving them in the process. Trust your team. Work together. This is easy or easier, it's all hard work, to do in the good times, but in the tough times, it's almost more important. So lean in. Don't abandon your focus on your people. Be honest and transparent as you can, because I realize there are limits sometimes to how much you're allowed to share. But respect people and offer them dignity. That is true leadership. Because I know we talk a lot about change events, like we have digital transformations, we have what other transformations, DevOps transformations, and I'm telling you, it's coming, AI transformation, right? These are big projects where change management, and people tend to focus only on those. But I want to talk to change management on a BAU basis, that day-to-day change management that happens in the teams all the time. A team member leaves a team. That's change management. You've got to manage that change. It's not the same team as it was before. Organizational structures changing. Change management. How do you do that in a way that brings people along with you? We must be looking at handling change on a day-to-day basis. And that means we as leaders need to be able to understand how the process of managing change. My personal favorite is to use something called the 𝐀𝐧𝐬𝐞 model. And the 𝐀𝐧𝐬𝐞 model basically says that when you're actually driving change, help people understand the why. Help people understand what's in it for them. Give people the necessary skills and knowledge in order to handle that change, and constantly repeat your message. And in those ways, you bring people along with you rather than plopping a change on top of them. I know that's very tech talk. It shocks me, honestly, how many people and how many leaders in engineering are ineffective at change management. Let's get better at that. All right. Finally, I want to close this keynote by talking about a pandemic story, because you got to have a pandemic story, right? How we need to be authentic as leaders. I've talked a lot today about how we create spaces for people, but do we create spaces for ourselves? How are you doing today? Are you in constant stress? Are you unable to switch off at nights or on the weekends? Do you have unusual levels of anxiety? It's normal in leadership to have moments of anxiety and stress, but if it's constant, maybe it's worthwhile doing some self-reflection. Leaders, we're human too. We face the same challenges as anyone else. And so I would ask, are you being honest with yourselves? Are you being authentic? Here's the pandemic story. You know, like everyone, we had a lockdown in Australia, and we were like, we can't do the travel. I can't travel outside Australia. I love traveling. And so we decided, like many, to take up a hobby. And so my husband and I, we decided we were going to learn how to ride a motorbike. Of course, that's what you do at 55, right? I had this image of myself like this badass bike rider. I'm roughly about 21, tearing up the motorway, you know, across the Nullarbor Desert on this amazing motorbike. So I was like, hey, let's go and take our L's, which is, you know, the first step on learning to ride a motorbike. So we did this one-day course, and I have to tell you, it was heaps of fun. We went around little circles, did figure of eights. It was 125cc. It was just a great day out. I thought that was it. I was like, yeah, okay, done that. We've got our L's. What I didn't take into account was that my husband got the bug. He was absolutely, no, we're going to go and we're going to get motorbikes. And he went out and bought a motorbike. I was like, what? And I realized once we got the motorbike and we're out on the real road with real traffic and real potholes and real big juggernauts, that I was absolutely terrified. The reality of riding a motorbike in Australia was not pleasant. I was the biggest scaredy cat. Now my husband's like, okay, just go local, just practice. So I took out his motorbike and I was going around the local neighborhood trying to get better at riding a motorbike. And I got to a T-junction and trying to turn right, I ended up dropping the motorbike. Now, any of you out there who know about riding motorbikes, dropping your motorbike is a big no-no. I dropped the motorbike, and this hurly-burly guy came out, and he's like, stopped his truck, and he came out and he sort of picked up my motorbike with his little finger and wheeled it out of the way. I was so embarrassed because, to be honest with you, the fear was not of being hit by a massive truck. The fear was of being a failure and a fear of looking stupid. It was my ego that couldn't handle the failure of not being able to succeed at riding a motorbike. But God bless him, my husband persisted. He's like, no, keep going, keep going. And I gradually started to get better. I persisted, and with his support and a new motorbike, I started to realize that I could do this, until one day I was riding around these bends, and suddenly a huge smile cracked on my face. I realized I was having fun. This experience has given me a wonderful sense of resilience. And I use this experience to remind myself of how I can back myself in difficult times, that I can do the work. And if I take things one step at a time, I can achieve things. It's hard to describe that experience for me and how deep down it has changed my life. And this is how I encapsulate it. Growth happens in the not knowing, when we don't have all the answers, because that's when you have to back yourself. And that's where you get your confidence. Leadership is hard because the decisions we make not only impact ourselves, but those we lead. And if we make poor decisions, it might impact a lot of people negatively. That's a scary thought. But I truly believe that we need to be kinder to ourselves. We sort of have these fixed ideas about leadership, this is what successful leadership looks like. This is what failure in leadership looks like. It is very black and white. Leadership, I believe, is not like that at all. I think it's okay not to have all the answers. I think we need to bring ourselves into the role of leadership and be prepared to back ourselves. We need to be comfortable in our limitations and our humanity. And I think we need to have the courage to show others that we don't have all the answers. My experience has been that if you do that, others tend to trust you more. And I think it brings a wonderful authenticity into leadership by backing our true selves. It might not be perfect, but it reflects us. And there's an honesty that people can attach to with that. So that's my 4 stories. And just to close out, we are handling huge amounts of uncertainty and complexity at the moment, and we do need to be comfortable in ambiguity. So I encourage you to be a permission giver, to focus on skills like strategic thinking, that everyone is able to think strategically, not just senior people, to focus on building confidence so that people can back themselves, to focus on creating opportunities, and to focus on creating spaces where people can thrive and grow. And finally, that change is always happening. That change is a journey that is constantly evolving. And we can't stop change happening. We've got to embrace it. And we've got to give our teams agency and empower them to be able to handle that change. we can manage how change impacts people. And we do that by giving transparency and agency to them. And finally, we need to be authentic. True leadership is about being authentic. We cannot be true leaders unless we are authentic with ourselves and bringing that authenticity on a day-to-day basis. And that means sometimes acknowledging that you don't have an answer. There's a shift happening. It's not surprising when times are tough that people resort to command and control. I urge you not to do that. I urge you to focus on people and think about people and humanity. Because without humanity and putting people first, we're going to constantly struggle to deliver business value in a consistent way. So back yourself, think about your context, and never forget that building awesome product is done by having faith in the people who discover and deliver it. Thank you. I think that's the end.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne-Marie. That was a wonderful session.
Okay.
I would say.
All right, come back.
Experiences and a lot of story, I would say. I think 4 different pillars or story, or whatever you want to mention it. Thanks for sharing such an insightful, your life experience. I think recent stories. I think which sort of provoked everyone to think about their own leadership. I think you can, take a look at the comment section. People having their own reflections based on what you just shared, which is just amazing, and everyone can, relate to their day job. Thank you again, and a round of applause. Please use emojis since we are all remote. Thanks again, Anne-Marie. We have a few minutes. Is it okay if we can take a few questions, Anne-Marie?
Sure. I'm more than happy to take questions.
Let's say the question that I see that has been upvoted the most is from Rahul. I'll bring it on the stage. What strategies can organizations implement to encourage employees to step up and demonstrate leadership qualities in their daily work and interactions?
Yeah, so I think that the 2 key things that have worked for me is the first one is like looking at what's in it. I think about what's in it for me. So when you're looking at coaching people, really understanding what drives them. Like, is it a career path? What do they want? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? And if you understand those, work to those, because there's nothing like having a senior person believe that backing you and backing your career. Like, it's not just about the organization, it's about helping them. So I make a really big deal of understanding what my team, what's important for my team, and making sure I'm meeting those. Not what I think they should be doing, but what they want. And that way I build trust. And that's one of my key pillars of how I lead. The second thing is that organizationally, it's not enough to just have that person. You need to look at the systems in place. And so take example, career progression, which is something that many people are keen to have in their organizations. What I do there is looking at career growths. Is there a career path for, like we had a quality coach team, is there a career path for the quality coach? How do people understand how to get from one step to the next? So I think there's like systems that you can put in place. But the ultimate thing that I believe that really helps people is one-on-one coaching. It's such a powerful tool, such a powerful way of supporting people. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. And by the way, when I talk about coaching, because I think it's kind of such a blurred word at this point, what I really mean is not necessarily giving people all the answers and telling people what to do. It's actually giving them the agency to own their career, to own decisions. So, for example, what I might do is, take the strategic thinking is not necessarily, this is, this is what strategic thinking is, though I have to provide that information. But it's like, okay, the next time I have a strategic thinking opportunity, I'm going to pair with you. I'm going to get you to own that. And, it is interesting in the strategic strategy type work. One of the things that I made a point of was making sure that the person who I paired with had their name on that document. So if it was a Confluence page, they were the one to post it so that their name would be associated with that work, because I wanted people outside my team to see that my team were strategic thinkers and that they were able to do that. So those are the sorts of things I focus on. There's probably others, but that's what comes to mind.
Absolutely. I think that was elaborate. Thanks, Anne-Marie. I was just going through the questions. There are so many good ones and we are short of time. I'll probably pick one last question and I'm just so confused on which one. Let's bring this one. How do or should we break down those myriad tasks into fundamental, universal goals post in order to simplify and streamline team workload, from Cassandra?
Yeah, well, I think that is not just a quality question. And I think that it's not just about breaking down all the tasks, I think, though I think you do need to have clarity on that. I think this is a team thing. And the only way you're going to focus on this is by bringing that team together. And my belief is that one of the roles in quality that we can do is increase collaboration and connection. It's not easy. It's a tough task. And it's something that you need to have support in. So like your drivers, like a key person that needs to be involved in that conversation is the product manager or the product owner, right? Because they actually have control over how much time. Typically, they have a lot of control over how much time is allocated to a team to develop a feature or a product. So are you working to educate those people about what is the real work? Are you having conversations about what is the work and helping them understand that the work is not just about writing code. The work is about a whole heap of other things that need to be done in order to achieve that. And there's a bit of advocacy that you need to do here, because the advocacy that you need to show is to help people understand, if you provide this time now, which is really hard to get them to do that, right? That's the critical problem. If you can provide that time, you're going to free up all that, you're going to reduce unplanned work, right? All those incidents in production, all that work that's happening that is costing you from actually working into the next feature, that's slowing down the next feature, you can actually prevent that. And in time, it becomes more predictable and reliable. So you need to learn how to have those conversations, and you need to practice having those conversations with people. They're not easy conversations to have. I understand that. And sometimes it needs a lot of confidence to have those conversations. But again, the only way you're going to start having those conversations and getting confident is by starting to have those conversations. Like, it's, just give it a go. Just practice, trying to have those conversations. Maybe the first few times you're going to kind of feel all buttermouthy and you're not going to know what to say. But that's okay. That's all right. It's okay to not be perfect the first time. But, have a go with it. Maybe get some support from someone within your organization to help you practice those things.
There you go. That was a coach in action. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. I think that's the end of the session as well as day one. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for wonderful insights about quality and leadership. What a way to end day one with a closing keynote all the way from Australia. I know it's pretty early there. And thank you for, being awake and giving that a powerful and energetic presentation. Such an insightful one. Thank you so much. And For those of you who are still hanging in there from different parts of the world, thank you so much. We had people right from Finland to Australia to India and then different parts of the world and listening to your talk. So which is quite amazing, having people joining from different time zones. So thank you for all joining, and look forward to announcement from my team. There is some fluid space session that's going to happen for next 15-20 minutes. It's like the hallway track conversations that we love in the in-person conferences. So it's now available via Fluid Spaces that the team will enable it for you. And thank you so much again, Anne-Marie and everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.